tabulator tenders, we guide the electors through the process of casting a ballot. We are the last poll worker to help them before they get on with their day. Many electors have become used to the previous tabulators and procedures, so they were able to cast a ballot without too much assistance. The new systems provide a greater level of elector feedback and may require the elector to interface with the tabulator directly. Our role is partially to instruct, inform, and educate the electors as to how the new systems work and are to be used. As a result, we should expect electors to take a little bit longer than in previous years to cast their ballots. Before we get started, remember that if you would like to rewatch this video or rewatch a section of this video, you can use the navigation buttons at the bottom of this video screen to fast forward and rewind. A tabulator tender is responsible for managing the technology and processes during ballot casting. This includes assisting electors with the process of casting their ballot, monitoring the tabulator, interpreting messages from the tabulator for the electors, and instructing electors on proper use of the tabulator. Additionally, we ensure that the line of electors waiting to cast their ballots is orderly. We provide electors with "I voted" stickers and direct them to the exit. We periodically inspect the privacy booth area to ensure that electors have not left any items behind. If the tabulator tender is available, they may also participate in setup and breakdown of the election. This video will describe each of these responsibilities, but before we get started with our election responsibilities, we need to complete some administrative tasks before the polls open. Most tabulator tenders will arrive before the polls open. Poll workers are expected to arrive no later than 5:15 a.m. unless they are a partial day worker. Tabulator tenders, like all poll workers, need to check in with the moderator. The tabulator tender needs to perform 3 tasks with the moderator. One task is the swearing-in ceremony. Here, the tabulator tender agrees to act impartially and independently of outside influence. Once sworn in by the moderator, the tabulator tender must sign the moderator's return, stating that they have taken and will abide by the poll worker's oath. The second task is signing your timesheet. This is the document that will be used by the registrar to facilitate your paycheck. The third preparatory item is receiving your supplies from the moderators and assistant registrars. If you are opening the polls, these items include signs that may need to be displayed on the tabulator tender's table, "I voted" stickers, optic cleaners, privacy folders, etc. Please note that some of these items may have been set up already by the setup team prior to your arrival. Once you have your supplies, it's time to assess the tabulator tender's station. Begin by placing any signs, privacy folders, and "I voted" stickers on the table that the setup team hasn't installed. Ensure that the tabulator is on the far side of the table from the exit. This will allow you to interact with the electors after they have submitted their ballot and before they exit. Ensure that the tabulator is up and running. You can confirm that the tabulator is up and running when it has the "Insert Here" ballot animation on the screen. If the case is still closed, the moderator still needs to open the election. Just a few general notes. When an elector is casting a ballot, the tabulator tender does not touch the tabulator. The elector does. It is the job of the tabulator tender to instruct the elector on how to use the tabulator, not to use the tabulator for them. Another reminder, the tabulator tender cannot look at an elector's ballot. That is why we use the privacy folders when a ballot is not in the tabulator. If a line develops, keep a 6-foot radius around the current elector to assist with privacy concerns. And finally, the tabulator tender cannot leave their post. The tabulator must always have a poll worker stationed at it. Once the polls are open, it is the tabulator tender's job to ensure that each elector's ballot is either accepted by the tabulator or placed in the auxiliary bin. So let's walk through the most common type of interaction that an elector and tabulator tender will have with a tabulator. The elector will approach the tabulator. The tabulator tender should direct them to insert their ballot by saying, "Thank you for voting. Please place your ballot between the green arrows on top of the ballot box, below the small arrows, and above the large green arrow. Make sure to push the ballot all the way in. The elector will place their ballot in the tabulator between the green arrows. The tabulator will report that the ballot was accepted. The tabulator tender will ask the voter if they would like an I voted sticker. If they do, hand it to them. Do not place it on them, as many electors don't like being touched. And then say, "Thank you for voting. The exit is this way," while gesturing towards the exit. In the previous example, the ballot was accepted by the tabulator. However, it did take about 3 seconds to process. It was filled out correctly, so it was accepted. In the event that the ballot is not filled out correctly, the tabulator will hold ballots and ask the elector how to proceed. The 3 types of exceptions are a blank ballot, an overvote, and a ballot that contains unreadable marks. When this occurs, the very first thing to do is read the message. The tabulator will tell you and the elector what the exception is. If the ballot in the previous example were blank, contained an overvote, or contained an unreadable mark, the tabulator would not have accepted the ballot and would have prompted the elector to make a decision. There are 2 possible decisions when this occurs. Submit the ballot as is, or cast it, or to have the ballot returned so that the elector can correct it. It is the job of the tabulator tender to instruct the elector what these types of messages mean. Please note, the tabulator tender should not make selections on the touchscreen for the elector. It is the elector's responsibility to respond to the messages on the screen. So let's take a moment and look at an example of an overvote ballot. Here the elector has voted for multiple mayoral candidates. In this sample election, electors are only permitted to vote for one candidate in this contest. In the event of an overvote, the tabulator will hold the ballot and prompt the elector to make a decision. The tabulator tender should tell the elector, "The tabulator has held your ballot because it has detected more votes for an office than are allowed." This is called an overvote. If you wish to correct the overvote, press the return button on the screen and we can supply you with a replacement ballot. If you would like to submit the ballot as is, you could press the cast button on the screen. However, if you cast the ballot, the contests with overvotes will not be counted. If the elector chooses to cast the ballot, offer to hand them an I voted sticker and say, "Thank you for voting. Exit this way, please." If the elector chooses to return the ballot, they should be informed that in this case, overvotes cannot be corrected on the same ballot. So we direct the elector back to the ballot clerk that issued their initial ballot. In this way, it can be replaced. If the elector needs assistance locating the ballot clerk, the tabulator tender should raise their hand to request the assistance of another poll worker. Remember, the tabulator tender cannot leave the tabulator unattended. Let's take a look at another example. The elector has submitted a ballot with an unreadable mark on it. This occurs when a mark on a ballot cannot be confirmed as a vote. If the tabulator detects an unreadable mark, the tabulator will hold the ballot and prompt the elector to take back the ballot for correction. It will not offer the option of submitting it as is. The tabulator tender should say, "The tabulator has held your ballot because it has detected an unreadable mark. If you press return, the ballot will be returned to you so you can correct it." The tabulator tender should direct the elector to the nearby privacy booth to correct the ballot. The elector will not have to wait in line again if they choose to correct their ballot. If the ballot needs to be replaced, the tabulator tender can direct the elector to the ballot clerk. When the elector returns, try having them submit the ballot in different orientations. Basically, flip the ballot over, turn it to the right, turn it to the left. A few other points of note. These tabulators can read different ink colors, unlike the previous ones. They can also read lighter marks on the ballot. However, the older magic marker style pen is discouraged by the vendor. While this should not impact the current environment, it may affect how many unreadable marks are detected. Additionally, if a lot of ballots are passed through the tabulator with wet ink, it can smudge the optics in the reader. If the tabulator tender notes a lot of unreadable marks on a given ballot orientation, they should alert the moderator, who is able to clean the optics. In the next example, the elector has submitted a blank ballot. In the event of a blank ballot, the tabulator will hold the ballot and prompt the elector to make a decision. The tabulator tender could tell the elector, "The tabulator has held your ballot because it has not detected any votes. If you wish to correct the ballot, press return on the screen and you can correct it. If you would like to submit the ballot as is, you could press the cast button on the screen and no votes will be counted." If the elector chooses to return the ballot, the tabulator tender should direct the elector to the nearby privacy booth to correct the ballot. The elector will not have to wait in line again if they choose to correct their ballot. If the elector chooses to cast the ballot, offer to hand them an "I voted" sticker and say, "Thank you for voting. Exit this way, please," while gesturing towards the exit. While uncommon, ballot jams can happen. The tabulator will alert you to a ballot jam. There are two types of ballot jams that can occur: a ballot jam where the ballot was counted, and a jam where the ballot was not counted. In both cases, only the moderator has the ability to clear a ballot jam. If the tabulator reports any type of ballot jam, raise your hand for the moderator. It is the policy of the registrar that all ballots should be initially submitted to the tabulator. However, it is possible that a scenario may occur where a voter intends to cast a ballot or wishes to cast a ballot that is not readable by the tabulator. This scenario may occur if an elector is in a rush and exits the polling location before the tabulator can inform them of, say, an overvote. An elector states that they want to have their ballot hand counted, or the tabulator is experiencing a technical issue like a ballot jam. In the event that the voter intends to cast a ballot, but the tabulator cannot accept it, the ballot can be placed in the auxiliary bin. The auxiliary bin is located on the front of the ballot box and is outlined in gray. Ballots that have not been counted by the tabulator and that the voter intends to cast can be placed in the auxiliary bin. After the polls close, the moderator will assess these ballots and include them in the final count. Electors do occasionally leave ballots in the privacy booths. Additionally, electors occasionally leave personal items in the privacy booths. A tabulator tender should occasionally, when their post is covered, survey the privacy booths for personal items, campaign material, and abandoned ballots. Make sure to check the center storage compartment of the privacy booths while we're at it. Personal items will be handed over to the moderator, and abandoned ballots will be returned to the ballot clerk. Please note, a ballot not in the possession of an elector is considered abandoned because the voter did not intend to cast it. This means that the votes on the ballot will not be counted. Abandoned ballots are handed over to the ballot clerk. If a tabulator tender notices that the tabulator is reporting a lot of unreadable marks when the voter states that there are none, it could be that the optics on the system are dirty. The tabulator tender can direct the elector to insert their ballot in another orientation. This means flip the ballot or spin it around. If this fixes the problem, alert the moderator and ask them to clean the optics on the tabulator. No poll worker should ever view an elector's ballot. While a ballot is in the tabulator, the gray screen acts as a sort of privacy screen. This allows the tabulator tender to approach the tabulator and instruct the elector. However, if a ballot is returned to the elector, offer them a privacy folder. While one elector is using the tabulator, keep other electors back at least 6 feet to help provide privacy for the current elector. No one can leave the polling place with a ballot. If any poll worker witnesses an elector attempting to leave the site with a ballot, alert the moderator immediately. Once the elector casts a ballot, they should leave the polling location. We also discussed the term voter intent. This was used previously. A general guideline is that if a voter states that they want to cast a ballot, or the ballot touches the tabulator, the voter intends to cast the ballot. If a ballot is found unattended, it is determined that the voter did not intend to cast the ballot, and it should be returned to the ballot clerk as abandoned. If there's any question regarding voter intent, refer the decision to the moderator. One other note, these tabulators take between 3 and 4 seconds to process a ballot. It is possible that electors will try and exit as soon as their ballot hits the tabulator. Please remind electors that their ballot has not been counted until the tabulator confirms that it has been accepted. I hope this video was helpful. As always, feel free to rewind to sections of this video that you may want to cover again. If you have any questions, please email pollworkers@norwalkct.gov. And thank you for being a part of the Norwalk Poll Workers team.